Rotten bastards wouldn't take my picture. This is a medieval century box. Look at this. There's a picture in the King's Bastion of a Scotsman in a kilt with a busby standing guard outside this very building. Fiona, do you remember all those years ago when we first came here with the Luigi?
Yeah.
And he was showing us the monkeys. It was here, the taxis were stopped right here.
It was, yeah. And also, we've got an easterly, so we're going to be shrouded in cloud in a minute. Our feet will be covered in cloud. That's the Devil Tower Road down there.
No, Devil Tower's in the front.
A bit further along.
Yeah. It's on the north face, isn't it? Wow.
Well, look at the cloud.
I know.
Now.
You glad you came?
Yeah, I am. I won't come again. I can't believe...
Are you glad you wore stilettos?
And never mind that the stilettos are all right. It's just so fucking high. It's so exhausting. I'd forgotten how high it is. It really is unbelievable.
What do you think, Michael? Does that look good?
It looks so good. Water's nice and cheap. Let it cool down.
Well, that's a bit of a result. We just come watching dolphins. There's dolphins. Just there. And fin whale popped up. Enormous great fin whale. I didn't have the camera out, but my daughter caught it on video. Hopefully she'll send it to me and I can post it. Yeah, you haven't seen a fin whale for a while. Nice one. So, back to the dolphins. All those years ago when we first came here with the Luigi.
Yeah.
And he was showing us the monkeys. It was here, the taxis were stopped right here.
It was, yeah. And also, we've got an easterly, so we're going to be shrouded in cloud in a minute. Checking for food.
She's a female. Females, they are the most aggressive.
Yeah?
Really?
Yeah, because they are the last ones. They are the last ones to feed. Anda, venga, papa, vamos, vámonos. They are the last ones to feed, and they are always very nervous when it's time to get the food off your hand.
Yeah.
Although we're not supposed to feed them. You got a £500 fine if you're caught.
Really?
Yeah, so. Yeah, he's Michael. He'll actually, they can have no food for him, but he'll actually give you 5. Look, ¿qué pasa, Michael? ¿Qué? Anda, a ver. ¿Qué pasa, eh? No food, you don't do nothing, no? He normally he'll give you a slap or ask for food. If he knew I had food, he'll do like this. Be careful, other one.
Benji. Checking my pockets.
Oh yes.
If you touch
She's
him,
very aggressive. Yes.
yeah, if he shouts, you'll be in big trouble, eh?
Yeah.
They'll all come.
Will they?
Yeah, if that baby shouts, you'll be in
The whole
serious trouble.
group. The whole group comes. Yes, will come.
Isn't this
The whole of them.
Yes.
He's very young. ¿Qué pasa, guapo? He's just over a year old. No, not on my shoulder. No. Wants to go on the shoulder. Eh? Very inquisitive. They're just over 3 months old now. And they are the males. The young ones that you see walking about are males.
Yes. They're males.
The females
Yes.
are still with the mothers
Ah, I see. Yes.
until about 5 to 6 months old.
They need.
This is the Charles V wall we were talking about before, about
Yeah.
Barbarossa, and up to here it comes.
I see.
Oh look, there's a wild one. That one's trying to get down.
What is done to my antenna? Look.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do this.
Yeah, look at the cloud.
squeezer.
Is that a video or?
Video, yeah.
First.
That's it. Right foot all the way down.
You did good. You did good.
That's it. Left foot down today.
How are your shoes? They're okay. As long as I hold on tight with my hands, I think I'll be alright.
You're coming off the road there. What do I want to do? Keep on going.
What colour is it?
Yeah, his lens cap.
You
sure I'm not
So if you're out taking
Thank you.
Left foot high. Left foot backside first. Gives you the height when you step
See it?
Yes, I can see it. On the shelf. At the back.
Oh yeah.
And then you've got Frankenstein's monster here. To the top of the head. Oh yeah, let's go.
Oh,
Yeah. Okay, this one's called Cathedral Chamber because of the three central pillars you can see in the order patch at the far end. And the most photographed thing inside the cave is nothing vast, it's very, very small. What in caving terms is called a heligmitic speleotherma. Heligmites and helictites don't follow the norm of the drip. You can see they grow in many different directions. Mainly because they're affected by evaporation and by the breath of the cave. So they're not growing on the perpendicular, which you expect something that's water form to be doing. Now the most photographs is believed to be unique to the cave and what's called the baby's hand. And that's tucked in the wall here.
Oh yeah. Little baby hand. You don't see it. Yeah. It's right there.
You've got the green laser on it, have you?
Go check it out.
That's the most photographed thing in the cave.
It does look like a hand, it really does. It's worth checking out.
Is it? Well, it's a baby hand, isn't it? That's why it's called baby hand, isn't it?
See it, Phil? Okay, so what you're walking around on, this is a speleotherma, it's all right, called rimstone, it's where it's forming. And without wanting to be too technical about it, I'm sure most of us understand the basics how the stalactite forms on the drip. That's one of the few things that most of this stuff holds in common. It starts life at exactly the same size. That's the circumference of the drip when it's ready to fall from the ceiling. So that's where the deposits are left. The next drip forms in the same place and the same happens. Forms what in cave is called a cheese straw. And you can see some of the silver-ended straws up there now. As water runs down the outside of the straw, it fattens them up and eventually blocks the end of the straw, and the straw becomes a stalactite. Drip leaves the stalactite, splats the floor, makes a far fatter stalagmite in the floor. Enough time, enough water, enough minerals, the two join together and form a stalactite. Yeah, or a column. Now if it's dripping on water, this big lump at the bottom can't happen. But as the drip leaves from up there, as it's passing through the air up the outside of the drip is sufficient to dry calcium carbonate while it's falling. So when it hits water, it deposits tiny pieces of floating calcium carbonate, almost called flow. It's literally floating stone. As other ripples hit drips hit the water, the ripples carry these things to the side, they stick to the side, so that's the basics of rimstone. So that's what we're walking on here. Now there is a little experiment you can carry out to back that up. But what you need to do, whichever hand, your dominant hand, whichever hand you do your writing with, is you stretch the skin between the fingers of it, and then get the hand as wide apart as you can, without touching the bottom of the water. Put your hand in the water, and then you pull the thumb into the palm and wrap the fingers around it in a tight fist. Do you want to give it a go, Ben? This takes about 20 seconds to put right, or for it to work. So keep it really tight shut. It takes about 20 seconds, but keep it really tight fit. Good, that's tight. That's
Your laser's on.
Yeah, that's good. Shows it's working. Okay, what we're going to do is go for a really tight squeeze, as tight as you can, for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Don't open your hand. What I want you to do now is really slowly start to relax the fingers. Keep the fist, but just start to relax the hand. You feel this hand are really relaxed now. Okay? Now, very slowly, start to peel your fingers away from the thumb, really slow. What can you feel? Can you feel it all sticky? All stuck together? That's because what you're feeling there is because there's so much calcium carbonate in the water. It's not breaking it down. This is just full of this stuff. It's at saturation point. So what would stick inside is all inside.
What does that mean?
I'm not good drinking water. If I had my feet in it, I wouldn't drink it.
So how far?
It's all right close up, you know, but it's no good in any range. Close-up caving shots for Facebook. There you go. I got a still off that. I was going to recommend that Gibraltar has a maritime museum. Gibraltar does not have a maritime museum, although Gibraltar is one of the major places with maritime history. You know, apart from the UK itself. I mean, there's been lots of maritime history everywhere, I know. But as far as Britain's concerned, because Gibraltar is British and it has been British since 1704, I believe. 1713 if you count the Treaty of Utrecht. Now, it's had a massive maritime history because it's right at the gates of the Mediterranean. And there's dozens of shipwrecks, I mean dozens and dozens of shipwrecks all around, dating right back to Roman, Phoenician times. They keep pulling stuff up off the seabed and going, oh, look at that big lead anchor from the Romans. That sort of thing. So I really don't know where to start with it, but Battle of Trafalgar, for example, as far as British, the Royal Navy is concerned, the Battle of Trafalgar is probably the biggest and most significant battle that ever took place in the history of, or if it's not the biggest, it certainly rates up at the top, because there has been some quite big battles. Bismarck, for example, sinking the Bismarck, that was monumental. And we can talk about HMS Ark Royal, which played a big role in sinking the Bismarck. The little planes from the aircraft carrier managed to knock out the rudder of Bismarck, and it just went round and round in circles, couldn't move. And the Royal Navy came in and finished it off. Biggest threat, of course, Churchill said during the Second World War to Britain was the convoys, the U-boat menace, and of course the Bismarck was adding to that problem, surface raiders and stuff like that. The Bismarck had to be sunk at all costs, I mean literally all costs, whereas the Ark Royal had been trying to take supplies and convoys to Malta in and out of the Mediterranean from Gibraltar. It was based at Gibraltar, and it went off into the Atlantic to help sink the Bismarck, because the Churchill threw everything, and I mean everything, and this typewriter at the Bismarck. Okay, it must be sunk. Similar thing came along with the Tirpitz, but that didn't really break out, it just got sunk in a field somewhere. But yeah, getting back to Gibraltar, the maritime history here is so rich. I mean, HMS Victory itself was towed into Gibraltar after the Battle of Trafalgar for repairs, with Nelson's body on board, of course. Famous HMS Pickle, that took the message back to the UK that the Victory had been won. The ghost ship, the Mary Celeste, that was found drifting and abandoned in the Atlantic Ocean. It was towed into Gibraltar, into Rosier Bay in the 1870s, I believe. And yet Gibraltar does not have a maritime museum. I mean, to this day, it has a navy base. I mean, at one time, there was a massive, massive navy base. And there was a whole squadron here, I think during the war, Force H, I think it was called, was based here. There's very little based here anymore. I think there's a couple of patrol boats. And that's about it. They've got a large patrol boat and a few smaller ones. But all the naval ships, all the submarines are regular visitors to Gibraltar. I think just about every warship that's ever been in the Royal Navy has come to Gibraltar at one time or another on its way off to engage whatever, wherever in the world. Nuclear submarines, obviously, they need to get supplies. We won't say any more about that, but they get supplies from Gibraltar. There's military transport aircraft landing here at the airbase every 5 minutes. Well, not that often, but they do come in quite a lot. Come in regularly with stuff. Let's just say stuff. Okay. And there's nothing here. It's a great shame that we didn't get one of the aircraft carriers when they scrapped them all before the new aircraft carriers came along. The last two, I think, that were at the Falkland Islands. Ark Royal, I think, was one of them, and I can't remember the name of the other one. But they just got sold for scrap for a couple of million to some Turkish scrap metal merchant, and then towed off to Turkey to be chopped up. Whereas we could have had one of them, you know, a floating museum. I'm sure we could make room. Gibraltar would benefit tremendously from a maritime museum, without a doubt, because it's got such a big, massive maritime history. It can't be ignored, it really can't. There's just so much stuff going on. There's piles of cannons and cannonballs, like a big pyramid of cannonballs on the seabed, because when they were all obsolete, they all got dumped in the sea. And there's a huge pile of cannons, cast iron cannons, that divers regularly dive on and swim round and take pictures of them and think, wow, look at that. There's umpteen wrecks out there, because wrecks that were bound, ships that were bound for the convoy to Malta to supply Malta, they were sunk in the bay by the Italian special forces. So there's shipwrecks down there that are just full of supplies, you know, brand new jeeps, guns, fuel, food, you name it, whatever was on those convoy supply ships, lying on the bottom of the Bay of Gibraltar right now as we speak. There's at least 6 of them, I think. Can't remember the exact number that were sunk out there. It's very deep, the water, though. It's a bit difficult to get to it. And Ark Royal herself was on a convoy to Malta. The airplanes would fly off the deck and try to cover the convoys that were going to Malta. Malta's in the middle of the Mediterranean, and it was the most bombed place on earth at that time. And we're talking like early 1940s now. And they wanted to bomb Malta out of existence, and it was absolutely crucial that we managed to get supplies to Malta. But unfortunately, Malta is very close to Italy, and Italy was on the German side, and the entire Italian Air Force was bombing the shit out of these convoys. And they had to be able to do 15 knots, because from Gibraltar to Malta, it's going to take you 3 days at 15 knots, and you're getting bombed all the way. Okay, so it was a tricky old one. And on one of the return journeys back to Gibraltar, she took a torpedo from a German U-boat, and luckily only one person was killed out of about 1,500 crew members. A destroyer pulled up alongside. They got all the crew off, by a skeleton crew that were trying to salvage the vessel, but they didn't manage to salvage it. It was keeling over, taking on water, and they sent 3 tugs from Gibraltar to pull it in. Presumably That was the plan, but it didn't work because one tug got its rope all tangled up in its propeller, so that was out of the way. That was useless. One got lost, and only one tug actually made it to the Ark Royal and hooked it up and started towing it, but one wasn't enough against the tidal flow, so it did actually drift further away from Gibraltar, even under tow, because of the tide, and then it keeled over and sank in the early hours. And it's lying in over 1,000 metres of water. That's over 3,000 feet deep. It's just ridiculously deep. It's too deep to get anything to it, but it's just part of the rich history. That ship was actually built in Liverpool, Merseyside, Camberlairs, on the Wirral side. It's actually built there in the late 1930s, so it was a relatively new aircraft carrier when it was sunk. I don't think it was 5 years old. But there you go. Gibraltar should have, without a doubt, a maritime museum. Think about it, guys. Get yourself a decommissioned warship for a start. The best place to start. An aircraft carrier would have been perfect, but we don't have any left. They've all been scrapped. Thanks for watching.